welcome back to the Digressor. As you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm here with Emery again.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about, Emery, you tell them what we're talking about.
So basically we're going to be discussing, like, what was it? Something, like,
I wanted you to explain.
huh?
That's why I wanted you to explain it, because I was like, yeah, still don't even know what I'm going to call the episode.
Yeah. So basically we're going to be discussing about working in, like, customer service and, like, retail working and such. So, yeah.
We were originally going to talk about something else, and then we got to talking last night about this topic, and Emery was like, hey, let's do this instead. I was like, yeah, that's actually a good idea. I always agree with you. You could be like, let's talk about different types of bread, and I'm gonna be like, that's genius.
Okay. So basically, this came up because I was telling Trevor that in order to get a job, like easier in San Francisco, you basically have to have a resume. According to what Trevor told me from what was it, the Texas Workforce Commission or something?
Texas Workforce Center. I did a 3-week course class in 2009, and then afterwards I did a 2-week internship at the Abilene Reporter News, which is the newspaper in Abilene, Texas. And while I was doing the course, they did a couple lessons on how to fill out a Sebby's in the room and she's barking, so Emery had to mute it. So they did a couple of courses on how to fill out a resume, and the instructor was like, and don't put the time that you were flipping burgers or pushing cart. They don't need to know that. You don't need to put that on your resume. And so, yeah, and that's the only jobs I've ever done, so I didn't do a resume. And
Yeah.
I was, yeah,
So
and then
basically, with that, high schools here even have like resume building workshops, and they've told us even from back then, like, hey, include any job, any volunteer experience that you have, and for basically every single job that I've applied to here, I've needed a resume for like any restaurant work or like working at a bakery or anything like that, like any type of customer service work, I needed a resume.
And so that's the difference between San Francisco and most of these. I don't know if it's because it's a big city or because I've lived in small places, but I'm in Texas and Ohio. I've never once been asked for a resume. So it's kind of a culture shock. And it's in the same country. So that's what led to this conversation.
Yeah, I went on an angry rant about how flipping burgers and pushing carts are actually extremely difficult jobs.
Yeah. And Emery was like, we already have a script for the episode because there was a really long rant. And especially made them angry when I said that a lot of people were telling me that I'm always being asked when I'm getting a real job, because I worked in restaurants. I currently work in a convenience store. I've worked in the grocery store, and every time I'm always asked, when are you getting a real job? It's like, and my current job, I'm always complaining because it's really stressful. And Emery's seen me have anxiety attacks from this place and the last place I worked. And I've had people tell me, oh, if you think this is stressful, wait till you get a real job.
And the thing about that is that, like, it is a real job. You can't demand a service and expect to get that service while simultaneously degrading the people who are providing it for you. So it's like, if someone's going to say, oh, your job isn't a real job, I feel like they shouldn't have any right to get anything from that service whatsoever. So I'm just like, you know what? If they think that burger flipping is so easy, then why don't they do it themselves? If they think that pushing carts is so easy, why don't they do it themselves?
It's
They don't
below that.
realize.
There was one time when I was busting tables at the restaurant. I won't say any company names because I know they don't like that. I was working at a restaurant a few years ago, and I was there was this mother with her two children. Their children were probably like, I don't want to say, about 8 and 12. I'm gonna guess. And the mother pointed at me. I was like 10 feet away from them. She pointed at me and looked at her kids and said, "I never want to see you degrade yourself like that." So that's the way we're treated.
It's so disappointing when people feel like they're above such work. It's like, what makes you so special that like you're better than other people? You know?
I don't know. I don't know what's up with people. And I was telling you, my very first, my work experience started with that kind of attitude. And that was the first time I've ever told you that story about, about, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. My first job was Dairy Queen. I'll go ahead and say that name. Because, yeah, I was 18. I had just turned 18 and I got my first job. Literally 10 minutes into my first job, I was sweeping floors. I haven't even flipped a burger, made a lizard, anything. The first thing the manager had me do was sweep the store. I'm sweeping the store and this customer goes, "Where's my blizzard?" And I don't know. He goes, "Well, we better find out." Okay. It's like, that's how my work experience started, and it's gone downhill since.
Yeah, I mean, my first job, like official job, was working at a restaurant. Well, so I consider it an official job-ish, but I kind of don't because basically they hired me because I can speak Japanese, and they're like, "Oh, but you're 18, so we can't put you on the books because you have to be 21 to serve alcohol." I'm like, "No, you have to be 18 to serve alcohol. You have to be 21 to drink it." And they're
Yeah.
like, "No, you have to be 18, so we're just gonna pay you money under the table and all this stuff." And I'm like, "Well, I needed the experience because like a lot of jobs are like, if you don't have experience, then we can't hire you."
How do you get experience?
Exactly. So that's why I was like, okay, I'll take this job. And I was working there for like, I don't know, only like 4 months before they stopped contacting me. And they basically just like, yeah, they just stopped contacting me for shifts and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Then later I found out that the owner was sick and then he passed away. So I was able to put on my resume that I was actually working there for longer than I was because nobody would know. And it helped to get a new job after.
They don't like long gaps. I have a long gap.
Yeah, similarly, so do I. But
Mine's 7 years.
I think mine is like 5 years going on 6 years.
Let's see what's messed up. That was when I was in Texas. That's part of the reason I moved to Ohio, is because there were no jobs. I kept applying. I think you remember when I was in the hospital because I was in the middle of the summer. I was out walking and I had a heat stroke job hunting. And then people kept telling me, if you wanted a job, you'd have a job. It's not that hard. But I was applying everywhere. And yeah, and then what sucks is the longer I was without a job, the harder it became because they'd be like, "Why has it been 3 years since you had a job? Why has it been 4 years since you had a job?" And so they look at that and say, "Well, you apparently something's wrong with you if you haven't had a job in 6 years." And it's like, that's why I haven't had a job.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And it just really like even to get certain jobs here, you have to have like a bachelor's degree that's like for like jobs that are considered entry level.
What? Like what?
I forget, but there have been some that I've seen when I've looked online for like just like temp work or for like even like just working at an office doing like the tasks that like no one else wants to do. You need
I
to have
think
a bachelor's degree and you need to have experience of like 2 years. And I'm like,
yeah, like how do you get experience without? Oh, there's a job near here. It's the phone place down the street that our friend worked at.
mm-hmm.
And so what's messed up is I went to apply there and they said you need 2 years customer service experience. By then I'd worked at the restaurant for about 3 or 4 years. And I was like, oh, I worked at the restaurant. Like, oh, what did you do? I said dishwashing. And they said, oh, well, that doesn't count because it's not working with the public. So even though I worked at the restaurant for 5 years total, that doesn't count as customer service experience, technically. Now I've worked at a convenience store for a year and a half, so another 6 months and I should be able to apply.
Yeah, it's like the requirements are absurd. They're like expect people to have all this like stuff and then they still pay you like less than minimum wage.
Yeah, at the restaurant, I was being paid bare minimum wage. In Ohio, minimum wage, I think it's 8.30, and I worked there for 5 years, and I was paid that the entire time. And they would always say, "Oh, you're the best dishwasher. You go above and beyond. You do more than just the dishes. You help the servers. You help the kitchen." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Can I get a raise?" "Oh, you got to earn that."
It's like because you're the best doesn't mean you get a raise because you clearly are not doing good enough. It's never
Yeah.
good enough.
Is that when I ask for a raise, then that's when they start saying, "Oh no, you're lazy. You don't do everything we ask. You just above and beyond, but don't do enough."
Yeah, that's
But then the cooks would get raises like every 6 months. There was a cook that threatened to quit, and they just threw money at him. One time I threatened to quit, and they were like, "Well, there's the door." I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna stay." You know how like they use like strikes, like mill workers go on strike, and like postal workers, and then like all these other places they go on strike, and then they get what they want, teachers. But then another dishwasher and they were treating us like absolute garbage, and so he and I were talking about like what if we just stand in front of the store and go on strike. And so like one of the managers overheard us, and he was like he was actually it was the one that was always helping me. So
mhm.
he wasn't just trying to discourage us. He was telling us the truth, and I looked it up, and he was being truthful. He said that doesn't count for this type of job. Like we could go on strike, the company would just fire us and replace us. So like there's nothing we could do. Do what we're told, and yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that job was protected by like union work,
No.
and that's why. And like people think that unions are terrible sometimes and stuff like that, but it's like, you know what's terrible? Capitalism.
Yeah, I always ask that, like, why are unions terrible? And they're like, oh, because they ruin everything. Like, what? Oh, they just ruin everything. Like, explain, give an example. Oh, they're just the bad news. You stay away from unions.
Like unions, although like it's more like they threaten businesses. That's what it is. And capitalism is basically what they are targeting because if you think about it, like unions are the reason we have a minimum wage. Unions are the reason why we have like 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 jobs and not like 12-hour shifts for the most part for a lot of jobs. Like, if they do, they're probably not with the union.
And speaking of that, I actually looked it up. I think I showed you the screenshots. Minimum wage was actually introduced, I think, in like 1938 or something like that. And
Hmm.
its original minimum wage was 25 cents an hour, which doesn't sound like a lot, but inflation. So I went to inflation calculator and I looked it up, and 25 cents in 1938 in 2021 is like I think it was like $18. I think I showed you the screenshot. So people were wanting the $15 minimum wage. That's still not up to inflation levels. And
Hmm.
then and I've had people tell me, including that coworker I was telling you about. I showed you that. Did you see the comment conversation between him and Mike? I
Yeah.
did, and then so that coworker was like, "Oh, it's the worst thing. It's and then so if you raise the minimum wage, it'll raise the price of everything else, but it already is. When I moved into my apartment in 2009, it was $450 a month, and by the time I moved to Ohio in 2014, we had a note on our door. It was 650. They were about to raise it to 7, and I looked it up a few months ago just out of curiosity. That same apartment is 950. So in 12 years, it went up like $500. So things are already going up. Minimum wage in that entire time has been 7.25.
Yeah. It's like the point of minimum wage was to have like it's basically just the minimal amount required to be able to live a comfortable enough life where you're not struggling to make ends meet. And I am I'm almost floored at the fact that like you can go to basically any place and like except for like because for most part California, like if you're working at a restaurant job, you're required to have minimum wage payment for all your workers, no matter what, including serving. And
Whoa! So
other
even
places are
servers
like,
get minimum wage there?
huh?
Even servers get minimum wage there?
Yeah, servers are supposed to get minimum wage. That doesn't change. Like tips are an additional thing, and tips do not make up. They're not supposed to
Wow.
make up. Yeah,
Here, we had a
that's what
lot
I'm
of servers.
saying. Like I
Yeah,
know for
because
like in Ohio, like you can get a worker who does not get minimum wage because they're supposed to make it up in tips.
yeah, their wages are through. I mean, they make the money through the tips. They don't really make it like I think they get like $2 an hour.
Hmm.
And that server that I said like a sister to me showed me her pay stub once. She worked like almost every day that week. She got $30 on her paycheck, but then she makes like $100 a day through tips. And because we were making minimum wage, like the bussers and dishwashers, sometimes the customers would leave the bussers tips. We weren't allowed to accept it. The We had to set it on the tables to give it to the server because they didn't want us making too much, I guess.
Yeah, because capitalism. It's ridiculous. Like people deserve to have like a life where they're not just like struggling to make ends meet. Like they deserve to be able to like still do things to take care of themselves. And we're not meant to just live to work and work to live. You know?
Like Cass and Cran says, we were meant to thrive.
Hmm.
But like if you spend your money on anything other than bills or groceries, people freak out. You remember when I saved up for the Xbox? I saved
Hmm.
up for like 6 months and I bought it. And then I was getting attacked on Facebook like you're just blowing your money on your blah, blah, blah. And like 6 months later I was low on food and people were like, well, if you hadn't bought that Xbox, you'd have food right now. Like that's not
Yeah.
how we're gonna live.
Like you shouldn't have to pick between the two in some like I get it to an extent. But as some like when you're low income, you have to choose between your wants and your needs, and oftentimes you choose just what you need. And the few times you do choose what you want instead, you're put down and shamed upon. And it's like as if you're like waste for just existing, for just like wanting something that is not what just only what you need. You know, and it's absurd. Like some like there was one time I was even attacked too for like the fact that I get insurance for my dogs, but I'm like, I have to. My dog is a service animal. My other one is a service animal in training. They need to have health insurance because if anything happens to either one of them, that's really devastating to me, not because it's just a pet, but because like service animals are literally medical equipment. You know, they are a
You were
necessity to functioning, and people don't understand that. You don't have anything to respond with.
no. I don't know. I'm speechless at a lot of this. Like you think I'd be used to it for the most part. I am, but I'm still like I hear more stories, and even sometimes I think back on things that I've experienced, and I'm like, did that really happen? Like, there's actually something that happened at. This is how used to it we are. Um, I was at the convenience store when I was working at the convenience store near where I live. It was like 6 months ago or so, maybe long. Oh wow, no, because I've been at the one I'm at now for more than 6 months. Wow, time's going by quick. It was at one time
Yeah.
when I was at that store. This guy, like the pump 4 wasn't working. We always had a problem with pump 4, the gas pump. And he came in, he's like, pump 4 isn't working. I was like, oh, yeah, I could just transfer it to the next one. It's like, oh, he starts screaming at me because the pump wasn't working. I need to go out there and fix it. That's not our job. We have maintenance for that. But he's just screaming at me, his spit flying. He wasn't wearing a mask. Spit was flying. It was hitting the glass shield. And he was cussing me out. And he's like, I'm never coming here again. And he stormed out. And then I went, I can get you next. And then the customers were like, how do you do that? You get used to it. But we shouldn't have to get used to it.
No, you shouldn't. It's like certain things that may be like extravagant to like other people. It's like they're a need to like us, or like if it's a need to us, like they're just like, oh well, then why aren't you focusing on that? Why are you spending your money on something so unimportant? It's like socks. Someone actually said to me that like, do you really need that pair of socks or do you just want them? I'm like, I'm sorry, but the socks I have holes in them. Yes, I do need new socks. Like, what kind of example is that? Honestly.
I don't understand people's mindset when it comes to stuff like this.
It's like, yeah. Like,
Something
no.
I've noticed. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The younger people seem to get it. I rarely have a young person go off on me. They're usually understanding. If we're busy and we're like, I make a mistake, they're like, oh no, I get it. You're okay. It's the older generations that are like, oh come on, that sounds unprofessional. You should have this down. Like or if like they see we're busy and like I'll tell them I've been here for. There have been times I have worked 12 hours because someone will call off. I don't have to cover their shift, and I'm like I'm exhausted, and I'll tell them like, hey, I've been here since noon. It's almost midnight. I'm tired. Like that's no excuse. I worked in the dirt.
Frustration intensifies. Oh gosh. Yeah, it is my experience too that like people who are like way older, like even just the generation before us, you know, but mostly like it's 2 generations before us that give me issue. Like basically like my mom's generation and older. They're the ones who I notice are the most problematic because they're just like, oh, but I was able to do this, so why can't you? It's like, well, do you consider the fact that there's time change, that things move forward, and not everything is going to be consistent from the time you're a kid to the time I'm a child? Like, what? You know, technology has increased in, like, the ability to do things in such a short amount of time. Like, how, and then that's like we're blamed for not being able to do certain things that they could do.
Yeah, like I got two examples. There's one Mike shared recently. There was a post. Someone tweeted that the young people nowadays can't weld as good as the previous generation did, and then somebody responded with, the previous generation can't blacksmith the way that people did in the olden times. It's like, yeah, we don't blacksmith anymore. We don't weld as much as we used to. And another example is Jimmy Kimmel. Someone showed me this. I don't know if you did or it was trending. I think it was Zendaya was on Jimmy Kimmel, and he was making fun of her because she didn't know like what a tape deck was or how to use a rotary phone. It's like she didn't grow up with that. She didn't need to know how to use it. And like he was laughing, the audience was roaring with laughter, like this was a big joke. And she's like, she was embarrassed. Like she even said like in another interview, like it was really embarrassing. It's like, and that's how they treat us like out there. Like you should know how to do this because I did.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. There's
No.
women get to know how to do things that like I don't know how to do, and we know how to do things they don't know how to do as well. There should not be an expectation of everyone has to know the same thing exactly.
Exactly. And then there was that I think it was a senator recently, like he voted against the minimum wage raise. He was like, "Oh, I voted no because you know what I'm gonna say." Yeah, I voted no because I got by just fine on $6 an hour in 1978. Yeah, 40 years ago. I think that was 40 years ago. Yeah, it was a long time ago. Things have raised. I don't know what the minimum wage was back at the time, but
Yeah.
did you realize inflation's a thing? I
No.
said it. I said it in another episode, but since no one watches my episodes, I'll just say it again. I did it. It was in my random ramblings episode because I also talked about minimum wage briefly there. Um, People always say if things go up, if minimum wage go up, everything will go up. And I said, so is my great aunt Joyce that I send you screenshots of all the time, the Trump supporter. I don't bring it. I don't confront her about it because she's 98. I don't want the last thing we say to be a fight. So I was like, good for you. But anyway, like I have talked with her about like the gas prices were like during COVID, like when it first started, it went down to like $1. And I posted it and we were talking privately about like she remembers when she was a kid and it was like 25 cents, and she remembers people freaking out when it went up to 50 cents. And like you can get the cliche, you can get into a movie and buy a popcorn and a candy bar for a nickel, all of that. And prices of things go up naturally. And like there was that picture of a McDonald's. I think it was either the 1960s or 1970s. The McDonald's, the full McDonald's menu, the most expensive thing on there was a quarter pounder for 78 cents. And then in the early 2000s, they had the dollar menu where like they had things that were like $5, so they had a dollar menu. Now the cheapest thing on the dollar menu was $2.50. Things go up. They normally do. So what if suddenly, because like people are saying, if you raise minimum wage, then suddenly you're going to be paying $7 for a cheeseburger. Okay, then that's what's going to happen. And $100, can you in 100 years, they're they're going to be like, wow, can you believe it was only $7 for a cheeseburger in 2025? Things go up.
Yeah. And actually, cheeseburgers are sometimes $7 here.
Well, that's San Francisco. I'm talking real world prices.
Hey. No, but like, also, I'm thinking more like the ones that cost like $7 are the ones that are like better quality than just a McDonald's burger.
Oh, right, yeah. And at the restaurant that I worked at, they have a burger there. I don't remember what it was. It was a really good one, but it was like six something, and it was really good. But I don't get it that often because it's that much. And my regular at McDonald's is a double quarter pounder, it's more expensive than that. I think my total came out to like $8 one time. And so I don't get that very often either. It's like I get it like right on payday, so I have enough.
Yeah, and I'm just like, people are complaining about the prices over there where you are too.
Yeah.
Like, what a culture shock they'd have if they came over here.
You had a culture shock when we went to Colorado.
I did.
And we
That's
discussed
because
that.
I didn't expect the vending machine to be the most expensive thing.
What was the most expensive thing?
Huh?
What was the most expensive thing?
Probably the speeding ticket that my uncle got. And even that was like not that expensive compared to like a California one.
Isn't the minimum wage in San Francisco 15?
Yeah, currently it's 15 an hour. A lot of places try to pay more than 15, but most places are, yeah, the minimum is 15.
Where I work, the store I work, the starting pay is $10.50, and minimum wage here is $7.25. And when that coworker got into an argument with Mike on Facebook about they've raised everything, and then like next time I saw him, I was like, I have a feeling Mike doesn't like you. Oh, I don't give an F. Blah 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 blah. And we got into a little discussion there, and he was telling me people are meant to suffer, so we can't raise minimum wage. And then I don't think I told you this. I told Mike, and he started laughing. So that coworker, he goes, so what's minimum wage? Like $10, $11? And I said $7.25, and he goes, wait, what? No, 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 no. We need to raise that. So yeah, like even for him, he's like a QAnon supporter and like all of that, like that area, like far right, and he brags about all of that, and even he's like, no, we need to raise minimum wage. That's not high enough.
Yeah, it's really something. Like,
Oh,
hmm? Hmm?
something else that people say is that minimum wage is meant for teenagers and minors, and that's why, as you know, and as everybody knows, that's why restaurants are only open after school hours.
Yeah, they right? They're not
Yeah.
open during the school hours, and they don't function outside of like midnight, 1, 2 a.m., depending where you are.
And then when I was a dishwasher at the restaurant, all the managers, when I would complain about how much, because you remember how much work they would put. I mean, they kept piling more and more. Like, when I started, it was do the dishes, take the dishes out. Okay. But then they kept adding more. I had to do prep work for the kitchen, and I had to do the kitchen's work. I had to sweep and mop the floor, on top of having dishes piled on the line, and I couldn't handle all of it. And there was only one dishwasher. No matter how busy it got, if we were slow, one dishwasher. If every table was full, one dishwasher. And they would always say, "Oh, it's slow out there." Of course, it feels slow to you. There's 5 servers and 4 people in the kitchen. What I'm getting at, I was kind of digressing a little bit because name of
That's the
the
point.
yeah. So they always say this job is meant for teenagers. You can't handle that. So I was the youngest person there as a dishwasher. There were 2 other people working as a dishwasher, and one was in his 40s and the other one was in her 60s. I'm in my 30s, and I started working there when I was 27. So yeah, not once in the 5 years I worked there did they hire a teenager
Yeah, they just,
as a dishwasher. There was the minors they put on drive-through or as a server, because the minors can't handle, they're not allowed to operate heavy machinery, like the dish machine. That kind of throws a wrench into their argument.
yep.
I brought it up with the manager once when he said that, and he's like, just get back there and do your job.
I have no patience for people like that.
Oh yeah, I have a. Okay, so actually, like working in retail and in the food industry and all that, it changes you. Do you remember how I used to be friendly to everybody, and now I have like no patience for anybody except like you? Yeah, I have a shirt that sums it up. I don't know where it is, but anyway, it basically it said I used to be a people person, then people ruined it.
Yeah.
That's me.
Like I still have patience for a lot of people. It's I only lose my patience with them when they're being very like obnoxious, to be honest.
Oh yeah, like I'm still friendly to customers. Like even if they're being rude, like I said, that guy was screaming at me, and I was still like, I can get who's next. Like I still nice to people.
But that's
It's
because
just
you have to for your job.
to be, yeah. And I'll be like, have a good day, have a good night, and you jerk.
No, literally, like, okay, I'm gonna go off on a tangent here a little bit, but my mom's coworker, like, she's like, they always tease her because she's like the sweetest person on the phone to like people who she's like trying to help and things like that. The minute she gets off, she's yelling profanities that anyone throughout the whole building can hear, like all the way down the hall from the other part of the building, like they can hear her yelling. It's so like accurate to how a lot of people feel but can't do.
Yeah, they someone I saw a post. I think Jen shared it. Was we need to have a purge, but instead of all crimes are permissible, have it so that retail workers are allowed to treat customers the way they deserve. There's that
Yeah,
restaurant where the servers like there's like the gimmick of the restaurant and the servers are rude. It's like we need to have like that should be the standard across the entire.
yeah, like or like just the fact that if a server is like super rude or something like that, instead of considering, well, maybe they have a tough job, maybe they're having a difficult day and everything's just too overwhelming right now. Like instead of considering that, it's like, no, we're gonna give them less tip. It's like,
Oh yeah, I see that all the time. Like there will be times where like the servers they do an amazing job. Like I'll see they'll take a table of like 25 people and they all they have they have like 3 pages of orders on their little notebook thing,
mm,
and and they'll be there for like over an hour and the server is by herself running back and forth and she's nonstop and she comes back and she's like leans against the counter out of breath and they leave her $1 or less.
yeah, that like like for here, I know that like a lot of people to figure out how much to tip, they'll just double the tax because the tax is like 8-9%, somewhere around there. So if you double the tax, you get a reasonable tip.
I usually just like give uh, the minimum
But
I give. Right.
you have to remember too, like they're getting minimum wage, and the minimum that you should tip is 15 to 20% of what you paid. That's the very minimum of what you should give as a tip. Not
The min the minimum I give for tip is $5. Every time. Even if they did a terrible job, I give $5. And the more I like them, the more I give. Like
right. But like
that,
here, if as long as you're giving at least 15 to 20%, it's like that's still acceptable. And then one time so it was like my grandma's best friend, right? Her husband, they were in Florida visiting, and her husband like went to tip, and he just doubled the tax because he's used to doing that. He didn't realize the tax was so low, so the person chased after him. You didn't really leave a tip, and he's like, "What?" And he was so confused. And when he realized, he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and like gave them more. But it's just like that initial like, "Wait, what do you?" you know?
yeah. There was this when I was in Texas, my group of friends and we went to this Mexican restaurant and we left I don't remember what the tip we left was, but we were stopped at the door as we were leaving. Like you didn't give a high enough tip, you can't leave until you leave a tip.
Yeah, I heard that happened to like someone else too, though. Here, like they got chased out after, for trying to leave without like tipping well or tipping at all. Even though they did tip, but apparently they didn't, according to the server.
Mm,
It's like, well, actually, technically, a tip is optional, especially in
yes,
California. Like when you're getting paid minimum wage already, tip is optional, but it should be mandatory for like. But like, oh, there's this one place I love to go only because they don't they do not allow tips in a certain way because they give their workers like high above minimum wage, and they make sure that they have like, and so they get paid very well. They include like retirement 401k, health care, like all this stuff. So all
wow,
that is included in the cost of the food. So you don't have to worry about giving a tip, and they're getting way enough to like actually survive. And I'm like, I love that concept.
that
You
is
know?
that is really cool. Most places I work, whenever you go to apply, they say, "Oh, we have these benefits: health insurance, 401k, blah, 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 blah." But the catch, and they don't do this, you have to average full time, 40 hours,
And
and
they
then
don't give you enough hours
they
to
don't
get
allow
that.
you. Like where I'm working now, I am a shift leader, and I'm not allowed to work over 39 hours, just so I'm below that. It, they offer that, it's there, and it's all over, like all the signs apply now, it's all like, we offer this and this and this. I'm a shift leader and I can't even get it. And in order to get overtime, one of the higher ups has to approve it, and it has to be a really good reason for them to approve it. And even then, like, it doesn't, you have to average full time, not just get like, I get full time this week, so oh, I get vacation time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
speaking of vacation
hmm?
time, should I bring up what they did to my vacation time?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so back in December, one of the higher reps, okay, where I work, it is mandatory that we wear masks, as it should be. We get fired if they catch us on camera without a mask. I've seen that happen where they call like, "Hey, you were not wearing a mask. You've been warned. Go home." So they take it very seriously. Except this one time in December, one of the higher reps came in for a little inspection. They call them rides, where two of the higher reps come in, and I kind of walk the store, see how things are. One of them wasn't wearing a mask. The next day, she tested positive for COVID. So everybody that was there, we were on quarantine for 2 weeks, for almost 2 weeks. We had to get tested, and I tested negative. And I was like, I don't. We were told we weren't going to get compensated, and I was like, that can't go because I have to pay my rent here. And so when the next payday came, I got paid. I'm like, oh, they compensated. It's cool. And then when I went back, I was like, they compensated. That's awesome. Yay. And they were like, you realize they use your vacation hours, right? But so yeah, that wasn't a vacation. That was I called corporate and they were like, well, that was a little vacation. You were off for 10 days. That was a vacation. Like, no, it wasn't. I spent the whole time anxious thinking I had COVID. And the second I got that negative test back, okay, go back to work. That's not a vacation.
Yeah, and the fact that it was mandatory too.
It was mandatory. Yeah, I didn't have a say. I was like, I was getting ready to go to work and they called and said, actually, no, you need, this happened. Oh, and they didn't even tell us at first. The manager texted me the next day. She made it sound like I was in trouble. She was like, "You're going to get a call. You need to pick up this phone." I'm like, "Oh no! Remember I sent you that screenshot?"
Yeah.
And then when they called, they didn't even tell me. It was the urgent care that called. They said your test is scheduled for this day at this time. Be there. And they didn't tell me what happened. And I was like, "Wait, what?" No, like talk to your manager. It was Sarah who told me what it was. So she wasn't a manager. The manager should have been the one to tell me what happened.
Yeah. Also, like mask wearing is basically mandatory in San Francisco still too, whether you're working or not.
Yeah, I put my mask on in the last video, but because it cuts back and forth between the two of us, it didn't show me. I have Oh, you can't see it because it's dark. I have a Starry Night mask. I love it. But anyway,
You can
I
kind of see
wear
it.
it. Huh?
I was able to kind of see it.
Oh, I see a little tiny thumbnail. Anyway, I wear it the second I leave the house. The second I get back, I wear it. Even if I'm just going to the store, like not even to work. And then there's people that like, oh, you're a sheep for wearing that. Like, no.
Like culture in different places is just so weird.
Yeah, and then I know in places I had a customer come in and he said that he travels a lot through like Asia and like China and Japan and all of them, and he says even before COVID they would wear masks. Like if someone gets sick, they would wear a mask. It was just a normal, it was a cultural thing.
It was a common
And so like,
courtesy.
huh?
It was a common courtesy.
Yeah. And so like they're already done with COVID because when they said, hey, you need to wear a mask, everyone just they put on the mask. And so uh, that's why like it only lasted a few months there because everyone wore
You're
masks.
cheating on our freedom.
I know, I hate
What?
that. And then people are like, they're coming on the year anniversary of everything being shut down. I thought it was only supposed to be 2 weeks, huh? No, they're trying to control you. No, no, that's not what this is about at all.
Yeah. And on that note, we should probably end.
Yeah, how long have we been recording? It doesn't tell me.
I don't know. It feels like about an hour. Like even if it's a little less, it's fine.
Yeah, I prefer going an hour, but yeah, we've been talking for a while. I closed the chat head, so I don't. I sent somebody a message like right before, and um, I had a package delivered. Let's see. I don't. I can't see. But yeah, it's probably been long enough. My thing is, as long as it's over 30 minutes,
It is
because
over 30 minutes. I know that for sure.
for fact, my introduction episode was about half an hour, and I never want an episode shorter than my introduction. So that's my only thing.
All right. Well, it was lovely talking with you about this, and thank you for having me again.
I'll have you anytime.
All right.
Hopefully we originally do our original topic
At some point.
at some point.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye. I'm gonna end this here.